That's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
And the crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
Dave Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's a flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Only Football Podcast. Tonight, we're talking playoffs. Kyle and I are going to go and ask some questions about what happened in Week 18 to lead into these 14 playoff games. We're also going to go into each team, starting off with the AFC, NFC, or whatever. We're going to start off with all the playoff teams. That's what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to power rank all of our playoff teams going into Super Wild Card Weekend. And of course, we're going to end it off with the Chives with Kyle. Let's get it. America is football. Football is America.
Football is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. For the moment in time, I don't give a damn. Oh my god!
No!
You loved it.
30 to 27.
Oh!
Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30 to 20.
Woo!
Ladies and
Playoffs.
gentlemen, playoffs. We're just trying to win the damn game. Some of us did, and some of us are in. Some of us are out. There's no more mysteries besides the mystery of who will advance in the playoffs. We're down to break it all down for you today on the Only Football Podcast. I'm Kyle. That is my co-host, or the host, however you want to look at it, Rick.
I'm Rick. Let's go.
And he is a Bears fan. And
Woo!
his Bears did snap a very important streak. How long did the high last? Are you still riding it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm still looking at all the highlights. I'm looking at Packers fans trying to cope about this win. I'm seeing DJ Moore saying fuck him. Jalen Johnson flipping him off. I love it. I am still riding high on that Packers win.
So I didn't hear that. So what happened? Was that like on the field? He was like, fuck him.
It was so Jalen Johnson flipping him off. Yes, that happened on the field. DJ Moore talking about fuck him was like a post-game interview by I think one of the Chicago reporters, Courtney Cronin, I think. I can't remember, but he was like, yeah, we beat Green Bay, fuck them. So it's great.
That makes it so much cooler that it was a reporter.
Yeah, it was sick.
That's TV.
Yeah. That's
I think he just inserted himself into the Bears Hall of Fame with that. Okay, so the Week 18 slate, very important week of football. You had a lot of teams playing for something. So you had the Ravens and the Steelers. The Steelers needed the Ravens to lose, and the Steelers needed to win. Neither of those things happened because the Steelers were playing the Bengals, who needed to win, and the Broncos and Dolphins to lose. They did get the Dolphins to lose, which meant if Denver would have lost, it would have been the Bengals that would have gotten into the playoffs, but that's not the way it happened. The Bengals, they were unlucky because the Broncos quite literally played the best game of football I may have it may have been the best game I've seen since 2013 week 1 against the Ravens when we scored 7 touchdown passes with Peyton Manning.
Wow.
That was the closest thing to that game. And
Mhm.
we pulled Bo out of the game. I mean, we could have kept going. And there's a lot of people out there that are, oh, those are the backups. Dude, that's still professional football players. Like,
Mhm.
I don't care if it's second stringers. They didn't bench 22 players. They benched a good amount of players, but some of their starters were out there. A lot of second stringers were out there. I'm still impressed. And on the flip side, if it would have been a close game, I would have been very discouraged. So I'm happy to be on the other side of it. It needed to be that kind of win. So Denver, they send the Bengals home. They ride a really, really good feel type of game into the playoffs. Bo Nix does his victory lap around Mile High. I don't know if you saw that. He ran
I didn't.
individual fan and did 2 laps. Patrick Surtain is now minus 500 as the runaway favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Nice.
Nick Benito, I think, is 3rd or 2nd. I mean, things are really coming together for the franchise. And I want to open up with this question for you, Rick.
Yeah.
The way the Denver Broncos in their season has gone, I mean, they have a lot of Pro Bowlers. Considering the $85 million that was unavailable, no team has ever taken such a large salary cap hit, let alone, I think the closest team to do it was Sean McVay's Rams, who took, I think it was a $70 million cap hit. I think that was 2 years ago or last year, and they made it to the playoffs. But no team has ever made the playoffs taking an $85 million cap hit because no team has ever done it. Yeah. And then on top of that, you start a rookie quarterback. What's more surprising, the Broncos making the playoffs on a 5.5 win projection preseason, or the Bengals missing the playoffs with Joe Burrow leading the NFL in passing touchdowns, passing yards, a triple crown wide receiver, and the sack leader. And just to put this in perspective, I think Joe Burrow threw, I think it was 38 touchdown passes to I think 6 interceptions. I think he was plus 32 or 33 touchdown to interception ratio, or plus 32. No quarterback has ever been plus 32 and missed the playoffs. So it's just very strange that he had the type of season and missed the playoffs. So I ask you, what's more surprising, Denver making the playoffs or the Bengals missing the playoffs?
I'm going to go with the Broncos making the playoffs for the things you mentioned. The 2 biggest things, $85 million cap hit, not looking good, right? Going into the season, projected lowest. Honestly, I saw something earlier on X and it said the Broncos will be racing for the number 1 pick in the next draft. And you guys won 10 games on a 5.5 projection win-loss total, right? So to me, it's the Broncos making the playoffs with both of those things kind of going into this, right? Now, obviously, as a Broncos fan, you know who your personnel are. You know who's really good. You know who's been there a while. Patrick Surtain is obviously a fucking monster. Zach Allen's very good. Benito's very, very good. You guys had some players that were, in a sense, anonymous to the entire NFL. Really, right? Like, I think it was, I forget which ESPN guy was calling I think it was actually John Gruden. He was calling the Broncos the anonymous crush. Orange crush, anonymous crush. Right? So it's like the Broncos fans know who their personnel are, who's better, and nobody else knew except for Patrick Surtain and probably Benito. You guys got rid of a linebacker in the offseason. I forget his name right now with the long hair.
Not Alex Singleton. Josey Jewell.
Yes.
You're thinking of Alex Singleton. He tore his MCL.
Oh, okay. So Josey Jewell is not Doesn't have the long hair.
Yeah, our plan was to move off Josie Jewell, and then Alex Singleton was going to be our starter. And yeah, that's another thing. Like
It's a
we
hit.
lost our starting linebacker.
And that's a big hit for any defense. You would think going into the season, you're like, linebackers, and the linebackers are like the guys. They're the quarterback of the defense. So all of that taken into consideration going into this season, a lot of people were not high on the Broncos, and you guys were able to get into the playoffs with losses on the defensive side, a rookie quarterback, loss of Jerry Jeudy, and 10 wins. So yeah, I would say that's the most surprising. The Bengals, on the other hand, why I'm not surprised with the Bengals, or at least less surprised, is they always start off slow, but that defense was so bad that like getting into week 10 into the middle of the season, it was like they got to do everything they possibly can. And Joe Burrow tried, the offense tried. At the end of the day, they couldn't do it. But when we talked about this the other day, we're like, don't lose to the Patriots. Don't start the season 4-8, right? So
Right.
Again, it's not really surprising anymore that the Bengals didn't make the playoffs, but I am just blown away by what the Broncos, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, and all these guys on your defense were able to do this year to get there.
Yeah, and for the Bengals, it's like I think they scored like 12 or 13 points against the Patriots week 1. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be one thing if like they lost 40-42. Like the Bengals
Yeah.
offense like didn't score 2 touchdowns. So, when it's that bad, there's a petition that almost has 25,000 signatures for the NFL to let the Bengals in the playoffs.
Oh God.
Well, this is like
Why?
they really do. Not everybody. I hate generalizations, but there is, I won't say a significant amount, but a portion that is in the tens of thousands of Bengals fans that feel like the Broncos don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Which to that, I say, dude, if that field goal doesn't get blocked against the Chiefs, we won 11 games. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like if we didn't just have an all-time choke job against the Chargers, we're looking at 12. And then if we had that many wins, we would have already clinched and we would have played our backups against the Chiefs. And maybe we lose that game. Like you can't play these games of, what would have happened. All you can do is be like, this is what happened. We weren't good enough. And the fact of the matter is they just incorporated the 7 seed. What is this? The second year or the third year?
No, it's about 4 years or so. I think it was like COVID time.
Yeah, it's been about 4 years.
It was like
but
COVID
still,
time that they
like,
incorporated it.
in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty recent. So, I mean, for a while, the Broncos and the Bengals both would have missed the playoffs. So, you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
The NFL made it easier. They gave you an extra team, and you got to be good enough to get in. And usually, we talked about this last week. 10 wins is that magic number to get into the playoffs. But if the Bengals would have had 10 wins, they would have gotten in and we wouldn't have, which is crazy because I remember you and I were going back and we were like 10-win teams don't miss the playoffs. And what we found was that's mostly true since they gave that extra playoff, the 7. Back when there was, it happened frequently. And I didn't think about that when we were looking it up. I'm like, it used to happen a lot. Well, that's because there was only playoff teams. Now with 7, it's been a little more like, if you get 10. But like I said, even if the Bengals got 10 this year, there would have been a 10-win Broncos team that would have not been able to get in due to the head-to-head matchup. So, it's difficult, but you got to find a way to get in. Now, what do you think is more surprising from Week 18? You had, and of course, this was the biggest game in Week 18, was the Lions-Vikings game. You had the Vikings. I had the Lions. Even in our power rankings, you put Buffalo at number one. I had the Lions at number one. And you were a little bit down on the Lions, and you said specifically that it was just injuries. It was the injuries that they were piling up. And what we did agree on was that we didn't know what Sam Darnold was going to look like in the playoffs. That was something that you and I both said, that's a little bit of a mystery. Now, after the game, I didn't expect the Lions to beat them the way they did. I really thought it was going to be a close game. So what I want to ask you, with all the injuries to the defensive side of the ball, a lot of people thought it was just becoming too much. It's not. Do you think it is more surprising the Lions defensively, the way they handled that game, or the Vikings offensively in the way Sam Darnold and the offense in a whole looked?
I think in this case you've got to go the Vikings side with how this is a tough one, I will say, because Darnold and what Darnold and that offense for the Vikings have done this year is awesome. But you watched that game, Sunday Night Football, and they had 7 downs inside the 5-yard line and could not get a touchdown. They turned it over once after 4 downs. And then on the second go around, they're like, we're just going to go for the field goal. Let's go for the field goal. Let's get some points, which is smart, right? But it's almost very surprising that they couldn't score, that they couldn't scheme anything up for Justin Jefferson, for Jordan Addison, for Hawkinson, for Aaron Jones, who did not look good against the Lions defense. But then you go look at the Lions defense and you're like, they absolutely put the clamps on the Vikings offense. Not only in the red zone, but throughout that entire game. And it was very impressive. But really, at the end of the day, I'm surprised that Kevin O'Connell couldn't scheme anything up to make this a much closer game, especially inside 5, when you got guys like Addison, Hawkinson, Jefferson, Aaron Jones, and your quarterback's a MVP like Sam Darnold this year. It was surprising. So I will go to the Vikings being more the Lions than the Vikings, than the Lions defense, which they did get Anzalone back. So that was easily a plus for the defense there for the Lions.
All right. In my last question for you, okay, what do you think would be more surprising? The Steelers beating the Ravens in Baltimore, or the Broncos beating the Bills in Buffalo?
The Steelers beating the Ravens in Baltimore, or the Broncos beating the Bills in Buffalo? It's Broncos-Bills. That is going to be that would be the most surprising. Broncos-Bills.
Over the Steelers on a 5-game losing streak and going into where the Ravens play. I feel like the Ravens are the most dangerous AFC team right now, personally. But you're going with the Bills.
I can agree. Yeah, I can agree with that. And the reason being is it's Russ Wilson, and if they're going to throw in Justin Fields, whatever, right? Whatever that case is. And Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. It's guys who have playoff experience, a guy who's won the Super Bowl. It's guys in the same division. They've played each other. They know each other very well. So I don't think that would be more surprising if it's like a very close game. They're on a losing streak. You make really good points about the Steelers. Daniel Barry, what's up? What's up, Nick, as well? But to me, and this isn't a slight at the Broncos, but the Broncos needed to beat the Chiefs week 18 to get into the playoffs. The Bills have punched their ticket since about mid-season, right? We knew the Bills, not preseason, but we knew the Bills halfway through the season were going to be a force to reckon with throughout the season and even into the playoffs. So to me, it is the Broncos beating the Bills because the paths are very different. And at the end of the day, they're both there. But to me, it's like the Bills are dominating on offense. The Broncos have a really good defense, but they've let up points, sometimes. And I think that would be the most surprising in Buffalo with the expectations of the Bills this year, and especially with how Josh Allen has played.
Yeah, the Bills are the most balanced team in the NFL, and I think I saw a stat that said that Buffalo is the only team in NFL history to have 20, I believe it was 20, it might have been more than that, but it was, let me just see, how many passing touchdowns did Josh Allen have this year?
Damn.
Let me see.
Yeah, no, the Bills are a really
28.
good team.
I think it was 25 then.
Wow.
It was like they had 25 rushing touchdowns and 25 passing touchdowns. And they were like the first team to ever do that. And I think the Lions were just one rushing touchdown short of tying it. So the Lions and the Bills are just more balanced than any other team in the league. Now, let's talk about the playoff teams because we have our seeds broken down. The 1 seed in the AFC, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs somehow let's just say their last loss doesn't count for much. Now I think Denver could have beaten Kansas City had they played their starters. Because I saw them play earlier this season. So I'm not afraid of that matchup. Now, I do think that playoff Mahomes is just different. You know, like he taps into it's like Michael Jordan kind of like, oh, when the games matter the most, he just rises to the occasion. But for that game, you know, they could have been 16-1 is what I'm trying to say. But they're going to be a 15-2 team.
Right.
They clinched the first seed. Andy Reid, Mahomes. Is Travis Kelce going to get back to some sort of form? And you guys thought I was joking earlier when I said something was going on with their relationship. I still believe something happened. I don't know what, but I just don't see it, the body language. I don't see them laughing on the sideline. I don't see the same, like, they had each, if anything, like, Watson has better rapport than Travis Kelce this year, and the numbers back that up. Is that going to switch because the playoffs start, or because I really feel like that's the only reason the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year? Because how many times did Mahomes just go to Kelce 6 times in one drive? Just Kelce. And if that's not going to be there this year, if I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm concerned, and I'm hoping that it just appears for, you know, the next 3 games. How are you feeling about the Chiefs as far as going and making history, doing something no one's ever done, and three-peating?
So this is like a tough one for me because we've had conversations on this podcast, and there's been conversations about it all the time where it's like, well, the Chiefs, once the playoffs start, they turn it on. It's this offense that you can't stop. And it's the same old Chiefs that have won the Super Bowl the last 2 years, right? It is what it is. This year, while it does seem to be a little different towards the end of the year with Travis Kelce and Mahomes and that offense not necessarily being amazing, I still got to trust that Andy Reid, Mahomes, and Travis Kelce are all going to get it together in the playoffs, because we've seen this story before many, many times, and already 2 years in a row. So to me, it's just kind of like a matter of time. The 2 weeks, 24 days off, whatever it is going to be really, really great for them. The rest versus rest debate is obviously going to come up, you know, once that divisional matchup comes to. But in my opinion, man, it's going to be the same Chiefs we always see in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes is going to do the unthinkable. Travis Kelce, after another mediocre-ish year during the regular season, is just going to be that guy again. in the playoffs and for Mahomes. He's going to be that guy. And then Chris Jones is going to be tearing it up on the interior opposing offensive line. You're going to have the Chiefs, just kind of how Nick put it, devil magic, black magic. It's going to come up. And while it must end eventually, I agree. I can actually see it happening this postseason.
Yeah, I could see it happening this postseason too. Oh God, I hope so. I'm just hoping that it comes to an end. The 2 seed, the Buffalo Bills. What do you think about? Well, I kind of know because you had them at number 1 in your power rankings. Now the Bills, they didn't look good against the Patriots, but they weren't playing their guys. So another one of those where I don't really care too much about it. But they got a young, hungry team coming in. And Sean said this in the locker room after the win. He said, young and hungry is dangerous.
Yeah.
I think that when this game opened up at 10.5, that's what they were favored, the Bills. I knew that was way too lofty. Now, can the Bills just blow out the Broncos? Yeah, they can. They could beat the Broncos by multiple scores, but I don't think it's going to happen. I actually think it's going to be a close game. And so do the millionaires that bet, because the line's down to 8.5 in just 24 hours. So that tells you that money has been coming in, big money's been coming in on the Broncos. For Buffalo to get to the Super Bowl, some would say, have the easiest path because they have to beat the Broncos. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the Ravens have the easiest path because the Ravens don't have to really play anybody until the AFC Championship game. I just don't see the Steelers or the Chargers being able to beat them. And that's pretty much what's going to happen is they're going to not have to play Buffalo or Kansas City until the AFC Championship game. But Buffalo's path, I think, is probably a little more difficult. And I think this first game is going to be a little more difficult than people think. And we'll talk more about that on Friday. But what do you think of Buffalo as a whole right now? Because it does feel like this is Buffalo's year to do it all. And the pressure, specifically in this game, is like totally on the opposite side of the spectrum, where on one team's playing with house money, just happy to be there. The other team, it's like if you drop this first game, you are never going to live it down. For Buffalo, like, how do you view them going into this game? Because there's playoff Bills, and Josh Allen's been great in the playoffs. I mean, this guy has 100 QBR in the playoffs. He's got like 20. I was just writing it out. It was like 22 touchdowns to like, I don't know, 4 or 5 interceptions. Like, he's been amazing in the playoffs. But the wins, he's got a 500 record. I think he's 6-6. So I don't know. Like, what do you make of Buffalo going into playoff time? Because they're one of those franchises that it feels like their season doesn't really start until the playoffs start. It's Super Bowl or bust, and it's been that way for the last 3 years.
Yeah, you said it earlier. It's the fact that Buffalo is clearly the favorite in this game, and while we've seen the Bills several times in the playoffs, they have had some heartbreaks in the playoffs. Last year, they make it to the divisional round, don't get past the Chiefs again, and this year they have to go up against a young, hungry, like you said, like Sean Payton said, young, hungry team. That this is a lot of these players' first time in the playoffs ever, and you're doing it with a rookie quarterback, right? So I think there's a lot of pressure on both of these teams. Now, there's a lot more on the Bills to win a Super Bowl or to at least get to it to believe in this team, or at least continue believing in this team. So I agree. There's a lot more pressure on the Bills, and the Broncos are definitely playing with house money, but I don't think the Broncos are just playing with house money and just wanting to lose, right? The Bills, we got to remember too, they got Keon Coleman, a rookie wide receiver.
He's been playing too much NCAA.
Khalil Shakur, who's not really a number. Yeah, yeah, I've been playing way too much college ball. And Khalil Shakur, who hasn't really been a number one. They don't really have any of these number one guys that are playoff proven like they had Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis last year. So it's really going to fall on Josh Allen's shoulders to see how he can get these guys into that playoff mindset, right? But yeah, man, I think all the pressure's on Buffalo. And it's going to be a tough look if they make a really, really early playoff exit.
All right. The Baltimore Ravens. All right. Baltimore's a little weird because I feel like when Baltimore's at their best, they're the best team maybe in the NFL. But then they do take a week off every now and then. And I think what is alarming, I think what's alarming about the Ravens, and I've been thinking about this all day. All right. The Bills and the Ravens are two teams that are in a similar situation where their season doesn't really start until the postseason starts. It's two fan bases that it's Super Bowl or bust for. But what makes him different is that Josh Allen has played remarkable in the postseason. And Lamar Jackson, have you seen his postseason numbers? They are atrocious. They're not just like, those are average numbers. No, they're bad. I think he's got like two. I mean, I have to pull it up. I saw it today and I said, that can't be real life. But while I pull it up, the Ravens, like, they have to win the Super Bowl this year. They cannot continue to be a team that looks really good in the regular season, and then once they get to the playoffs, they're just like nowhere to be found like last year. Lamar Jackson has a passer rating of 75.7. In the postseason, Josh Allen has a passer rating of 100. Look at this.
Yeah.
He's had 6 playoff games, and he's thrown for 1,324 yards. So that's not bad. That's averaging 331 yards per game. But here's the thing. 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 6 games. He's averaging 1 touchdown pass per game and 1 interception per game. That's his stat line average. That's bad. Like, that's really bad. I mean, you got 6 games and 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Like, that looks like when freaking like Teddy Bridgewater had to start for 6 games, and those are the numbers at the end. I mean, it's just so bad. And you're like, okay, here's the one thing we're all wondering once again. I don't doubt that Josh Allen's going to be Superman in the playoffs, but is Lamar Jackson going to play at the same level that he's been at all season long? Because he's been remarkable this year. The difference is they have Derrick Henry now. So I'm inclined to trust him more than I have ever in the past, but they did just lose Zay Flowers to an injury. I think that is a much bigger deal than people are thinking. I do think the path for the Ravens is to give Derrick Henry the ball 20 plus times and just let him work. That's what you got him for. Now use him. But for the Ravens, it's like, there's a part of me that is like, yeah, they should be the team that probably goes to the Super Bowl. And then there's a part of me that's like, I need to see it to believe it.
Sorry, I fucking went black there.
Do you want to,
in terms of Lamar,
reboot your thing and I can.
Yeah, I'm gonna reboot. I'm gonna do that right now. So I will be right back, guys.
No worries. So yeah, in KC, Kyle's right. Lamar's playoff stats are pretty bad. What's up, KC? And Bill's in here too. What's up, Bill? How are you doing, William? Nick said Rick was frozen like the Bears coach calling a timeout on Thanksgiving. Too soon. Too soon. At least Rick didn't have to see that. But yeah, those are my concerns about the Ravens. And look, their path to the playoffs, I said it, it's going to be very easy compared to a lot of these other teams. Because do I think they're going to beat the Steelers? Yeah, I think they're going to beat the Steelers. And then they're going to end up playing the winner of the Texans and Chargers. I think it's going to be the Chargers. And then in the divisional round, we're going to get the Chargers and the Ravens. And I just don't think that we saw this game already, right? The Ravens, they beat the Chargers very easy. And this game's going to be in Baltimore. I think the Ravens are going to be in the conference championship game, and they're going to play either the Broncos, the Bills, or the Chiefs. One of those three teams. If the Broncos can beat the Bills, I think they can beat the Chiefs. If the Broncos lose to the Bills, I think the Bills and Chiefs game, those can go either way. So you got Ravens. I mean, to be honest, no matter what, unless the Broncos beat the Bills and the Chiefs, the Ravens are going to go on the road. They're either going to go to Kansas City, they're going to go to Buffalo, or they're going to be at home for Denver. But I just don't see the Chargers beating the Ravens. Although the brother thing, it's weird to say, but as a Broncos fan, like if we are in the AFC Championship game, I'm going to be cheering for the Steelers this week. I'm going to be cheering for the Chargers next week if the Chargers beat the Texans, because I don't want to play the Ravens. I would rather play the Steelers, Chargers, or Texans if it comes down to that. I hope it does. But yeah, the Ravens, they're going to need to put a different brand of football out there. And I do think they're going to play the first two games, the wild card round, the divisional round. I think they're going to be good. It seems to catch up to them in the AFC Championship game. So I'm actually at that point with the Ravens where I don't think that they're going to have a bad game against the Steelers. I don't think they're going to have a bad game the next week against the Chargers or Texans. But wake me up when the conference championship game's about to start, and let's see what Lamar Jackson shows up for that game. Liam said, do you think the Steelers stand a chance against the Ravens? I'm going to be cheering for him. The only thing is, like, I don't trust Russell Wilson. I think the Steelers lost 4 in a row going into the playoffs. So it's just not good vibes right now. I don't think like the Steelers are on the side of momentum going into this game, and they got to go on the road. But if there was any coach that I had to bet on as an underdog on the road, it would be Mike Tomlin. He's the most profitable underdog road coach in the NFL. So it's a divisional rivalry. So add in those two factors. And do I think the Steelers could hang around and make it a game? Yeah, I do. But ultimately, I do think the Ravens are going to pull away in the third quarter. And I don't know if the Steelers have the firepower to climb back into that game. But gosh, I hope it is true. And Jin just said he needs my Addy to send this sweater. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm super pumped up to check it out. And Jin just said Henry is good enough to carry Baltimore if Lamar drops the ball too, though, Nick. Yeah, like I said, I think the Ravens, they don't drop the ball in the first 2 rounds. I worry about them dropping the ball in the conference championship. Hopefully against us. Wouldn't that be crazy? It would be the opposite because they owe us one. Mm-hmm. We're owed one. The Mile High Miracle. The football gods owe us one. And we would, what would it be called? Where do the Ravens play? What's their stadium called? Bank?
I have no
TA
idea.
Bank?
TD Bank?
TD, it would be called the TD Bank Prayer, and it would be a Hail Mary that
M&T Bank.
M&T Bank, the M&T
M&T.
Bank Prayer instead of the Mile High Miracle. That's what we
Well,
would call it. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts on the Ravens? I got you a lot more clear right now.
Good. Fucking computer. Anyway, yeah, the Ravens, the stats that you had mentioned, they don't look good for Lamar. And it's really because of that lack of running game. I feel like in several playoff games that he's been in, it's been the offense has been in the arm of Lamar. They abandoned the run completely, it seemed like last year in certain points. And I don't think they're going to make that same mistake again, like you said with Derrick Henry. They've got a bona fide RB1 and a 3-down back. So for me, while the stats do look bad for Lamar, I feel like it'll be a little bit more balanced. Last year, he didn't do too bad in terms of like touchdowns, interceptions, but overall, in terms of like sample size, it's not great. It's not great for Lamar, but I agree that the offense will be a little bit more balanced. It's the defense and most importantly, the secondary that is going to be probably the biggest risk, in my opinion, as to whether the Ravens move on to the next round or not.
All right. Our next team is the 4 seed. And the 4 seed is not a team that I'm concerned about, really. It's the Texans.
Yeah.
Now, we knew that the Texans last year were actually a scarier team than they were this year, but unfortunately, Tank Dell, another gruesome injury in the end zone.
Yeah.
You saw how much that affected CJ Stroud. He about got in the damn ambulance with the guy and left. I mean, he was really shaken up. I just don't think it's their year. Simple as that. I'm not worried about the Texans. I'm just not this year. Now, home field is always worth something in the playoffs. And they are coached well. And CJ Stroud, we've seen him be great. Not so much this season. What do you make of the Texans this year?
I agree. I have a very, very hard time seeing the Texans get out of the wild card matchup. And I think a lot of this is going to be on D'Amico Ryans, whether or not he's good enough of a coach. And not to say that this is all going to be on him, but a lot of this is going to take him coaching up the guys that he does have and doing their best to move on to the divisional round, because CJ Stroud has not been who CJ Stroud was last year. He took a really big sophomore slump. I mean, Caleb Williams has better numbers than him. That's how much of a slump he took. As a rookie quarterback is doing better than he is. And that's also like Bo Nix, Jane Daniels. 3 rookie quarterbacks are doing much, much better than the consensus rookie of the year last year. He took a major slump. That is, of course, taking into consideration Stephon Diggs not really being Stephon Diggs and also being injured and out for the season. Nico Collins being injured for a few games there, and Tank Dell injured for a few games there and then being gone for the entire rest of the season, really up until next season is the expected back. So D'Amico Ryans is going to have to do a lot to coach up the players that he does have, and they did bring in Deontay Johnson, I think specifically for the playoffs because they're thin at wide receiver, but it's going to take D'Amico Ryans a lot to coach these guys up, especially on the offense, to be like, hey, let's remember last year, the Browns came into Houston and everybody picked the Browns because of how well they were playing with Flacco. And what did we do? We absolutely bodied them. We blew the doors off that team and moved on to the division round, and we still played really good football. So it's going to take a lot of coaching to get this team through this wild card game. But I don't think they make it through. It's just there's a lot of down seasons for a lot of guys. The defense is still pretty damn decent, but it's kind of like the flip of the Bengals where the defense is good, but the offense is bad.
Yeah, I saw how you threw in that that CJ Stroud stat of Bo Nix has more passing touchdowns than him. I do.
All three rookie quarterbacks do.
I just wanted to remind everybody that Bo Nix also has more passing touchdowns than Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Aaron Rodgers. And Bo Nix has 7 more passing touchdowns than CJ Stroud had last year in his prolific season.
There you go.
I just had to. I had to. I
You
had
gotta brag.
I got to brag on my boy.
You gotta brag on the boy.
6th in the NFL this year in passing touchdowns.
There you go.
And you know what's crazy, Rick? We did our predictions.
Yeah.
And I got Bo Nix's passing touchdowns correct exactly.
Oh, no shit, really?
And yep, 29 touchdown passes. And you were like, really? And I was like, Russell Wilson got 28. He can get one more.
Yeah.
And I got the win total exactly right. Like, this is like an all-time year for me. I only with the Broncos. Only with the Broncos. Yeah. Okay, so now we move into the 5 seed in the AFC. And the 5 seed is going to be the Chargers. Or is it the Steelers this year?
The 5 seed is the Steelers, I believe.
Oh, wait, no, the Chargers, because the Chargers play the Texans. The 5.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Chargers. Okay. Jim Harbaugh. This was another one that was obvious to me that the Chargers were going to be good this year. You bring in a great coach, solidify the offensive line, put in arguably a top 5 quarterback, and he was going to find a way to get into the postseason. And the Chargers, they are riding into the playoffs pretty hot, 11-6. Not too long ago, they were losing a couple games, if I'm not mistaken, and they turned around and finished strong, and they get an 11-6 record and only one more win than the Texans. But don't you just feel so much better about the Chargers than you do the Texans for the way that defense has played? And all season they've limited their opponents to, I think, the fewest amount of points. Let me see. I have it pulled up right here. So the Chargers are number 1, 17.7 points allowed per game.
Jeez.
Defense travels. That is one thing we know. We don't say that about the offense, but we always say that about the defense. So if the Chargers, the same goes for the top 3 teams, 4 teams in the NFL, the Chargers, Broncos, and the Eagles. What they have going for them more than any other team in the postseason, in my opinion, is the fact that they can try to hold their opponents to under 20 points. If you can actually do that in any game, especially the NFL, because it's not basketball where you play 7 games, you just need one good game. Any given Sunday, and this isn't, none of these teams really, in my opinion, this is just me, I don't feel like any given Sunday is even an appropriate term to use in the playoffs, because if you've made it to the playoffs, you're a good team, period. So I think any given Sunday is when, like, the New England Patriots beat the Bengals week 1. Like, that's like an any given Sunday.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But any of these teams are capable of beating any of these teams. That's why they're here. And the Chargers are in the same boat where, maybe their offense at times doesn't look great, but what is consistent is that they are giving up 17 points a game, number 1 in the NFL. And here's what's alarming. On the road, they give up 13.9, which is crazy. Wow. It is less than 2 touchdowns. It is number 1 in the NFL by far. And we say defense travels. Well, this defense especially travels. So the Chargers, I feel great about. I really do. I feel like the Chargers could go to the AFC Championship game. I don't see the Chargers losing to any really team until they have to play the Broncos, the Bills, or the Chiefs. Those are or the Ravens. Broncos, Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. One of those 4 teams is going to be in the AFC Championship game, and the Chargers is going to play them.
That's it. Yeah, because if they're beating Houston, they're taking on KC, and
Oh
they
wait,
beat
no.
KC.
I fucked up. I fucked up because the Chargers will play the Ravens next week.
No.
And
They would play Kansas City.
no, Denver would if they won because they would be the
Not
seventh seed.
not according to the bracket.
The lowest
Oh, okay, never
remaining.
mind. Those aren't connected. Yeah. I get you.
Yeah. So, but still, like the Chargers and the Ravens, I think you got the Harbaugh brother thing going. We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
But I like the Chargers' chances in the postseason to
Mhm.
to. I think they could beat the Ravens. I think they will probably beat all the. Well, there's only one team they're playing until they play the Ravens in my projection. But I think they'll probably win that game. I feel really good about the Chargers personally because of the recipe. They have all of the elements that are needed to make an unlikely run in the postseason. When you talk Giants, 7-9, going on a run to the Super Bowl and winning it, that was a defense, and that was a pretty okay above average offense with Eli Manning.
Mhm.
That's what the Chargers kind of been offensively this year. I just feel like if they can do what they do defensively, they can get enough offensively to win these football games.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look at their schedule just to see like how, because it was like, okay, the Raiders, Panthers, Steelers, Chiefs, Broncos, Cardinals, Saints, Cleveland Browns, Tennessee Titans. They played some good teams. They played some really bad teams throughout their year. I again, like you're right. If you make the playoffs, you're a damn good team. Although the Texans are kind of really running away with that kind of statement, I feel like, but I like the Chargers defense. I don't think they're going to have a huge issue against the Texans.
The
It's just
Texans
when,
almost beat the Lions too. I think that's when
but
Goff threw like 5 picks. No, I get the Texans aren't great, but
yeah,
I think because they're in such a bad division, like people, I think because of what they did last year, we're unimpressed with what they're doing this year.
well, it's a pretty big fall off in terms of production on the
But they
offensive
have
side
the
of the ball.
same amount of wins.
Right, and that's because of there was a lot of things going on too. I mean, they did win it in the last game. So what I will say to that is it's very different compared to last year, right? It felt like again, CJ Stroud seemed to be rookie of the year, looked like he was getting MVP votes, right? That's how well he played last year. This year, you don't really hear that. So to me, it was more of like the defense this year got that much better where they were able to hold, I guess, teams to much closer games. I don't know exactly what happened with the offense. The offense is just not there for the Texans. What I will say about the Chargers is their defense is like number one in terms of points allowed. The fact that on the road is even better is mind boggling. And it just goes to show Jim Harbaugh and coaching in general, like how good the coach is and what kind of culture he sets, is hugely important. Now, what I do like on the offensive side of the ball is Justin Herbert. I also like that they got in Ezekiel Elliott too. They got Zeke. They signed him to the roster. So they're going to go all the way, is basically what I'm saying.
Put a Salvation Army bucket in the north end zone
Oh, it's over.
and watch what happens.
It's over. You get Zeke like, hey, it's like Forrest Gump. Hey Zeke,
Yeah.
you see the fucking Salvation Army bucket? Go, motherfucker, go. That's what he's
your
gonna do.
home.
That's your home. I agree, man. I mean, this defense is gonna be really good for going up against some of these offenses. I just don't know about the offense for the Chargers. Like you said, like they lost to the Cardinals and they only scored what 12 points, something like that at one point.
Yeah.
That's what it could be, and you hope that that's not what it's going to be in these playoffs, but that could very well be the case. So I love the defense. I don't love the offensive side of the ball, but they are going to be running it a lot. and hopefully they let Justin Herbert cook. It's just that Ladd McConkey, rookie wide receiver, and then you got Quentin Johnson as basically your other number one. Kind of took a step back as his number two now. And if those are going to be your guys, I don't know how much trust you can go with those two guys going into any playoff game, right? But I don't see them losing against the Texans, I guess is what I'm saying. We're going to do our predictions later this week, but that's just kind of my initial thought.
Yeah, and for Jinja, he was saying the touchdown passes isn't really prolific. I did want to just add in CJ Stroud had 4,108 passing yards,
a lot of
which
yards.
was 8th in the NFL last year, and he was 1st in the NFL in passing yards per attempt with quarterbacks that threw the ball over 450 times. He averaged 8.2 yards per completion. Like the passing touchdowns, yeah, that's not too impressive, but like the way he played it in a whole was very impressive. Like he finished the season with a passer rating above 100.
Who was a running back too last year?
It was that the guy. Who's the guy? Damian Williams,
Damian Pierce.
Yeah,
That's who it was.
And there was only for the quarterbacks that threw the ball 450 or more times. Yeah. There was only one other quarterback or two other quarterbacks that had a QB rating over 100, and it was Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott at 105.9. Dak Prescott lit it up last year. His numbers, 36 touchdowns, only 9 picks. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. Number 7 seed. Well, it's the Denver Broncos.
You want to talk Steelers?
Oh, okay. The Steelers.
I guess.
No. I forgot about them. I'm sorry. The Steelers, I saw a meme today, and it was a Broncos fan looking out the bus window and a Steelers fan looking out this window. And it said, paid Russell Wilson $85 million to not play, and he's smiling with 2 thumbs up. And the other guy goes, paid Russell Wilson $1 million to play, and he's frowning out the window.
Oh, it's so funny. So funny.
But in all reality, like Russ has had his moments this year where he's looked good.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that spark has just gone. It's just not there. And the question is, can the Steelers get it back? I just don't. I haven't all year. Even when the Steelers were looking good and people were throwing them in their top 5, I was like, it doesn't pass the eye test. When you watch a Steelers game, there's a couple games where I'll give Russell credit. Like he made a couple throws and you're like, damn, that looked like old Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. But I saw that last year with the Broncos, and I know better. It's just enough to keep you hanging on. It's just enough hopium that gets injected into your veins when he makes these ridiculous plays.
Yeah.
And then he just goes on these streaks where he looks terrible and he looks confused on the field when he does something dumb. Mm-hmm. Like he just looks like, have you seen this face he makes? And he's just like,
dude, that's Mr. Unlimited.
Yeah, and then he does something cool, and then he's like, hey, good game, keep doing your thing, 1-4. And you're just like, Russ doesn't even talk like that. What is he doing? I feel like he's playing a character. It's like he's acting like he's playing Russell Wilson in a movie, and he needs to just stop being like second person Russell Wilson and kill that character and be the real Russell Wilson. That's what's going to need to happen for the Steelers to go on a playoff run. He has to go out there and he needs to pretend that he's not in a movie and just go out there and be the Seahawks guy. If it's in there at all, it's got to come out right now in the playoffs, especially against the Ravens. Is it in there, Rick? Is that Russell Wilson in there enough for one game, one moment of just glory for one more one more postseason run. Can
I don't
Russell
know.
Wilson end his career on a high note?
I don't know. This guy is, how old is he? He's 36 years old. The last time he's been in the playoffs was 2020. His last 3 games, pretty damn good stats. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, over 750 yards. This is 4 years removed from his last playoff appearance. We've seen his play recently, and we've seen George Pickens disappear in games after he complains about not getting the ball. He disappears in games. Their running backs are nothing you want to lean on. Their defense struggles sometimes and somehow lets, I don't know, opportunities slip and don't really play like the defense that they were earlier this year. If you're telling me you're banking your entire postseason on Russell Wilson, I'm telling you, it's going to fail. It's going to be a rough one for them. And you're right. He should go back to being Seattle Seahawks Russ. It's just, I just feel like it's impossible. And one of the big things is, and I think somebody asked this question, if Russ is struggling in the playoffs, are they going to go with Justin Fields? And I said, fuck yeah, man. If you're riding your entire season on Russell Wilson to get you through one playoff game, and by halftime he has done nothing,
give me a score.
Go Justin Fields.
What's the threshold? If it's 14-0 and he's done nothing, does Justin Fields come in?
I think so. Third quarter, something like that. I think so. I think if you give Russ a half and you're down 2 scores, and it's been like, yeah, the Steelers have gotten as far as the opposing 40-yard line, that's it. Give it to Justin Fields, because we got to remember Justin Fields was 4-2 as a starter, and then they pulled him. So surely you're going to pull a 6-5 Russ Wilson, who's underperforming in the playoffs. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's a very complicated situation as a coach.
It's not easy. You're right.
As a fan, it's a lot easier to just go 4-2, 6-5, but we don't know what Justin Fields ultimately would have had a record of going down that stretch of ridiculously tough opponents. The Steelers had the most difficult schedule in the NFL. And when Russell Wilson did go in, everybody thought Mike Tomlin was a genius because the Steelers were better. They were putting up more points. They were doing more offensively. Justin Fields was winning games, but not because he was playing better than Russell Wilson. And then Russell Wilson kind of came back down to earth and started playing at, I feel like, the level we saw Justin Fields at it earlier, but it wasn't Bo Nix's second game ever where you can get an easy win by only scoring 10 points. Like, they were actually playing like Ravens and Chiefs and those type of opponents. And I don't know if I feel that Justin Fields gives you a better chance of winning than Russell Wilson. I do think the one thing that you have on your side is that quarterback coming off the bench spark that tends to go in your favor. So maybe if we're just not even moving the ball at all, like we have 2 first downs in the first half type shit, then I would be like, all right, let's just see if we can, even if it's just for one drive. I'm like, if Justin Fields goes out there and it's 3 and out, I might put Russell Wilson back in. I just need to see, like, can he do something that Russell Wilson can't? But it's very complicated trying to maneuver this. And this is why it's difficult to have 2 quarterbacks of this caliber on the roster at the same time.
We're trying to work them in tandem together, like package plays for Justin Fields to kind of get a spark. Have him run to the outside on some quarterback runs because he's an athletic player. It's just how much of bad Russ are you willing to see before you pull the plug? Yeah,
and I'm sure Mike Tomlin is going to have that number in his head, before as much as he won't talk about it, there is a number, there is a point, a threshold where Justin Fields will come into the game. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to watch. That game will
Mhm.
be on Saturday at 7 p.m. And then the Broncos, the 7 seed. Defense, spectacular.
Mhm.
Do you know Denver finished this season with more sacks than any defense in Denver history, which is
Wow.
quite impressive when you think Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware were on the same team.
Yeah.
And this, I think they had 63 sacks as a defense.
Wow.
It's
Must
that's a
be
lot.
fucking nice. Must be nice.
And then, so you're pressuring the quarterback, highest pressure percentage in the NFL. Zach Allen, I mean, he's been just on a tear. I think he had 5.5 sacks against the Bengals. Like, I mean, he has just been remarkable. Nick
Mhm.
Bonito, Jonathan Cooper. I can't say enough. I mean, the pressure is definitely Denver's strong suit. And then one of the wide receivers is locked down because of Surtain. I feel
Mhm.
like Riley Moss having that game last week, I feel like he's back into his form. I like our safety that we brought out of Miami. I think that Jones, I think he was a lot better than people anticipated. And I also think Cody Barton has stepped up and played linebacker a lot better than people thought. And keep in mind that Jonah Ellis is getting into the rotation more, our second round draft pick. And also, the injury to Drew Sanders that happened in the offseason, he's like coming back into the lineup. They said he was going to be ready around December. We're starting to see Drew Sanders, who we drafted out of Arkansas 2 years ago, like Sean Payton's first year. So they're actually getting a weapon back. And then on offense, I think Bo Nix is just playing spectacular. I don't care about the backups. Like I said, that was the game. Like he just couldn't miss. He rolls out, he extends plays, he tucks it and runs. The running game is starting to get into a real groove. And I'm not talking about the Chiefs game. I'm talking about the Bengals game and the Chargers game before that. They're driving down the field. They're putting together good drives. Overall, I think Courtland Sutton's playing very great ball. He just made $500,000 in incentives. He's our first 1,000-yard receiver since 2016. There's all kinds of streaks being broke, and that's what happens when you adopt a winning culture all around. So I like Denver as a playoff team, and I really do think if they can win this game, this is their most difficult game in their path to the Super Bowl, besides the Ravens. But I think if the Broncos can beat the Bills, I think that it's realistic to say that they could be in the AFC Championship game against the Ravens.
Oh shit! I love the Broncos defense. It's one of the best defenses out there, and it's going to be tough for a lot of these offense.
Last year, too. We beat the Chiefs
beat them last
and the
year?
Bills back to back. We
There
beat
you
the
go.
Chiefs and then the Bills last week. So we've seen this team beat Bills or Chiefs and Bills. Now we got to go Bills and Chiefs, but like defense travels.
Defense travels, and it's true. This defense for the Broncos is one of the best ones of the year of the NFL season. They're up there in terms of points allowed, sacks. Pat Surtain is locking down wide receivers. Riley Moss, I don't think he's elite yet. He struggled against T. Higgins quite a bit. So when you're going up against elite receivers, I don't know if Riley Moss is there yet. Is he on his way? I believe so.
From injury, though.
Yeah, so I believe he can get back there. The biggest thing for me is how is Bo Nix going to perform in the playoffs? How is the three-headed monster running back room going to perform? And while one of my biggest issues, but one of the biggest things I saw kind of that the Broncos had to overcome was the wide receiver room. Outside of Courtland Sutton, who are you going with? Mims has proved to be a great deep threat, and he's shown it in the last few games, especially against the Bengals. And Vele has done really, really well for kind of like a midseason guy to break out, this year. So if they can play games like they did against the Bengals, now obviously the defenses are going to be a lot better from here moving forward. But if they can keep up with offenses like they did with the Bengals offense, yeah, man, this could be a Broncos team that is special, that could get to the divisional matchup and send the Bills going home after the wild card weekend. I just don't know if it'll happen. That's the thing. It's Bo Nix in the playoffs. He's done.
The Broncos.
Bo Nix in the playoffs and the running back room are the two biggest concerns on the offensive side of the ball. But the offensive line, they're amazing. They're really good. I think Bo Nix has been the least sacked quarterback this year, and probably one of the least pressured quarterbacks.
Lamar Jackson has been the least sacked. He's been sacked 22 times, I think, and Bo Nix has been sacked 23 times.
And that's that. Both of these guys can extend the play if needed too.
Yeah, both of them are hard to bring down. We know Lamar Jackson's almost impossible to bring down. So when you see Bo Nix only has one more sack than that, it really points out, hey, because, the sack stat is not just the offensive line. Yeah, that's like 80% of it. That other 20%, I mean, you can have 10 to 15 to 20 sacks that are the quarterback's fault. And Bo Nix just doesn't take any of those. I don't even think he's been sacked. And I think he was sacked once in the last couple of weeks. Like, you just don't see it. You don't see it.
Yeah, the defense does have to play well. Kind of how Ginger's pointing out here. Yes, the defense has to play really, really well against these elite quarterbacks too as well. So I think I don't see a problem with Surtain shutting down, whether it be Keon Coleman or
exactly
Shakur. And you saw what he did against Brock Bowers. Like, the biggest game any receiver has had on Patrick Surtain was Jerry Jeudy, and that was 37 yards. So no touchdowns at all. So
yeah,
I don't
even had 3 catches for like 12 yards.
The shitty thing is there's only one Patrick Surtain on the team, because if you had 2 of those, you may as well put a bow on this fucking team right now.
But the Bengals are the only team that really threatens that part, where T. Higgins and Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the Ravens, the Chiefs, or the Bills. Those guys only have one serious wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chiefs have Xavier Worthy and DeAndre Hopkins, but I mean, they're not really slinging it like that this year. So, like, I think the worst that could have happened to our defense was the Bengals game, and that's not even going to show up in the postseason.
Yeah.
So you feel good about them, I guess. Okay, the number 1 seed in the NFC is the Lions. The Lions
roar.
Man, the Lions are the best team in the NFL. I'm just gonna say it. All right, they are the best coach team. You got their defensive coordinator being interviewed for a head coach. You got their offensive coordinator being interviewed for a head coach. There's just nothing not to love about the Lions right now. I mean, the way they played against Minnesota, it was just a reminder to everybody out there that was getting bored of the hype. That it's not hype. Hype is something that's not real. I'm all real, and the Lions are all real. And the fact that the path to the NFC is going through Detroit, I think, what is it, Ford Field, Detroit. I just don't see it. I don't see a path to the Super Bowl that doesn't include the Lions.
I agree. They're far and away the best team in the NFC, top 2 in the NFL. I also have a hard time seeing the Lions lose, and maybe that's a good thing, but it's also a ton of pressure, I think, and it could be a bad thing for the Lions. But with Dan Campbell, with Ben Johnson, with Aaron Glenn, you mentioned Aaron Glenn getting interviews for head coaches. That's how well this staff, this culture has been for the Lions, and it's just that good, man. Offense is good. You got Anzalone back on the defense, and you saw what that defense did in super important situations inside the 5-yard line. You prevented 2 touchdowns. You only allowed 1 field goal in 2 drives that landed inside the 5-yard line for the Vikings. If that's not dominant, I don't know what is, man. It's just this team is doing extremely well, and Aiden Hutchinson, I think if they get to the Super Bowl, he will be back. He will. He said it himself. He's like, I will be back if we make it to the Super Bowl. So,
No way.
yep.
Are you shitting me?
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Dude, that's huge.
Yeah. Can you
That is
imagine
like,
Aiden Hutchinson back for the Super Bowl?
yeah, and that's just so cool too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that reminds me of when I went on convalescent leave for a month and my dad took a tile saw and cut my cast off. And I put my foot in my boot and I came back in my flight suit. And everyone was like, dude, you're walking? It's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm not in any
Let's
pain
fucking
at
go,
all.
baby. What are you guys talking about? I'm back. What do you mean? I've always been able to work.
I've always been back. Dude,
Yeah.
that would be that Undertaker moment for Aiden Hutchinson. Like,
Dong.
the lights just going dark and it's just, and now number 91 for Aiden Hutchinson. He comes out, fireworks blasting off, Eminem.
And then
Dude.
what would suck is if he's coming out with the American flag and then has that Aaron Rodgers
Oh
moment.
no! Don't put that. Don't even put that on him.
I'm putting that out there so it doesn't happen.
Exactly. Reverse psychology. Okay. The Philadelphia Eagles, technically, in the Week 18 game, they didn't even have a full game day roster.
Yeah.
They were short of the standard allotment of players, but they were able to win anyway. This team is, in my opinion, I'm seeing a lot of power rankings that are saying that they have the same level of proficiency as the 2022 Eagles. I see a totally different team. Totally different team. This is a team that makes their bread off of defense and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And then when they need to, they got A.J. Brown and they got Devontae Smith. And I feel like we know who Jalen Hurts is. But it does feel like the path to the NFC. I mean, look, the Packers are going to play the Eagles this week. I think that might be the hardest game the Eagles are going to play until they play the Lions. So we're going to learn a lot about them on Sunday, because one thing about Green Bay is that they're very balanced. And what are the Eagles going to be able to do with Josh Jacobs? But just keeping it about the Eagles here, I think with the Eagles, you got a 14-3 team. You don't accidentally fall into that type of a record. So they are complete. The team is playing as a unit. It doesn't seem like there's any ego problems. There was that issue with what was it, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts. Yep.
And then he had like 122 receiving yards in the next game or something crazy,
And a touchdown or something.
and a touchdown, and he was like, "Yeah, we're good now" or something. I don't know. I never like it when receivers are like, yeah, it's about the team, but also like it's about me, because and we'll talk about it on my Chives with Tyreek Hill, but for the Eagles, like there's nothing that I'm missing. There's no gaps in the team as far as talking about like where things could go wrong. Don't really have anything to point to.
The biggest issue for me
Sirianni.
With the Eagles is surprisingly not Sirianni. Where the first couple things that come to mind, is Jalen Hurts going to be healthy for this wild card weekend? He's still under concussion protocol. He has not cleared that. Is it going to be Pickett, who had a decent game?
It's always, wait, can I just say, it's always amazing how they always clear concussion protocol in the playoffs, though.
That's fair. That's fair. But it doesn't seem, because Jaquan Brisker for the Bears has been out since like that week 6 game against the fucking Jaguars. And that was all concussion. Yeah, dude, it's insane. Who's quarterbacking? And secondly is, we've seen the Eagles defense crumble in fourth quarters. So how big of a gap do you have to put yourself as an Eagles team score-wise between yourself and your opponent for your defense to be comfortable in the fourth quarter. The other thing is the Eagles were second or third worst team in the NFL this season in terms of scoring points in the first quarter. You cannot start off slow in the playoffs. Any game, you can't start off slow. If you start off slow, 0 points in the first quarter, that's going to be a tough comeback. So for me, those three things right there are going to be rough for the Eagles. Who's their quarterback? How well will the defense hold in close games in the fourth quarter? And can they start off hot on the offense? Those three things are huge. Now, you mentioned Saquon Barkley. That's like hand the ball off 25, 30 times in a game, and you're probably pretty solid in terms of like efficiency, getting yards, getting down the field. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, two very good wide receivers. Can the quarterback who is quarterbacking these games get them the ball is the biggest question, because you can be one-dimensional, either pass or run, but eventually something's got to give, and you got to give the ball to Saquon, or you got to pass the ball, and you got to give 10 targets to each to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So those are the biggest things for me for the Eagles.
All right, the Tampa Bay Bucks, we celebrated for Mike Evans. He passed the 1,000-yard receiving mark to tie a record that was set by Jerry Rice, and fatten the paycheck and beat the Saints. It was a great chance for the Bucks to blow off some steam. They've been kind of going through the ringer all season. Now, think about those games that Tampa was playing on that stretch where they lost Mike Evans, and then they lost Chris Godwin. They still don't have Chris Godwin. When they were playing like the Ravens and losing by one possession. They played the Chiefs and lost at the very end on primetime. We streamed that game. Mm-hmm. Then the Panthers they played, and they end up winning in overtime, like 35-34 or something crazy like that. And it was just like, man, it was like Tampa was like so damn good, but they were just, they felt like one of the unlucky teams that was good enough to win double-digit games anyway. Like, it feels like if you put any other quarterback on this team, it's a 5-win team, maybe a 4-win team. But Baker Mayfield has been that damn good this season, where he has just been like, I don't care who we lose, get on my back. I'll do it with Cade Otton. I don't care. Yeah. We're gonna score points, and our defense is gonna give up more than they should, and we're gonna just have to score more than them anyway. I mean, this defense for the Buccaneers, they're giving up. I have it listed right here. 22.6 points per 22.6 points per game. Which is 16th in the NFL. It's right there with some of these other teams. Like, look at this. These are the teams in that range. Okay, I'm just going to tell you: Tampa Bay, Rams, Washington, New Orleans, Jets, Giants. Those 6 teams. Yeah. Okay, there's 3 of them that are playoff teams and 3 of them that aren't. Okay, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Rams, and the Commanders are playoff teams. What do they all have in common? Quarterback. The 3 that aren't, the Saints, the Jets, and the Giants in New England. Okay. We know Aaron Rodgers didn't have a good season. The offense was bad. So at the end of the day, when you have a defense that is mediocre or below mediocre, you're really relying on the quarterback being top 10 to get you into the position that Tampa Bay's in. Yep. I feel confident in Tampa Bay because I feel confident in Baker Mayfield. And that is kind of like just how I go about this. I saw Baker last year. He's one of those guys that rises to the playoff occasion. I expect Tampa Bay to be a really good team. And you know what's crazy? No one's picking them this week. I've already seen pre picks with the Commanders and Bucks. Everyone's loving the Commanders. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm taking the Bucks.
No, Kyle already with the Bucks already picking an NFC South team. Even though that's my thing.
How I'm feeling about the Bucks over here.
That's my thing, Kyle. You're supposed to let me pick the NFC South winner.
That's why I had to do it.
I fucking love Baker Mayfield, and I love Mike Evans. Those two together are just a fucking duo that you don't want to meet at any point in time. You also love the emergence of Bucky Irving, of McMillan, Auden last year going into this year. This offense is great. It just sucks that their defense is giving up a lot of points. And while they're mid-tier, it's still they're doing enough to get to the playoffs, for example, to win the NFC South, which, by the way, they've done it the last 5 years in a row. Craziness.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and the defense really, in this case, is the only downside of this Bucks team. Everything else on the offense is really good. I think Baker had 42 touchdowns thrown this year, something like that, something crazy. I love everything about the Bucks. I love that they're scrappy. I love that they've won the division the last 5 years. I love that Baker Mayfield's their quarterback. They've been doing everything really well. Aside from the defense, it's whether Todd Bowles can, not fuck up during the playoffs and not have, I don't know, just something go terrible, Matt Eberflus like in that Thanksgiving game, similar to something like that, where everything is going to be put on him on that loss. If that happens, everything else seems to be working out fine, and they've done well for themselves for the most part. But there's been games where you're just like, how do you lose that? How do you let Kirk Cousins throw for 500 yards and 10 touchdowns or something like that in that overtime game, right? How do you do that? So there were some head scratchers, but all in all, in terms of playoffs, I like the Bucks. If you're saying people are betting against them, that sucks. But I don't know. At home, I think they're good enough to win another game.
All right, and and what's funny is the Bucks, after winning all of those divisions in a row, people still just hesitate with the Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Todd Bowles.
Yeah. Super Bowl winning coach.
Coordinator.
Tom Brady. I don't know.
Coordinator.
I like the coordinators, Liam Cohen, and Todd Bowles is taking care of the defense. If you're going to have a defensive-minded head coach, you got to have a stellar offensive coordinator, in my opinion. And Tampa's got that figured out right now because they took Liam Cohen from our number 4 seed, the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah. And the Rams, they did something that I felt like 80% of the world didn't like. I'm one of the people that do like it. Sean McVay is top 2 coach in the NFL right now.
Ooh.
And he's one of those coaches that when he does something, he just... I'm not saying you have to love it, but respect it. He's not just throwing darts, in the dark. Everything he does has a reason. I mean, what it takes to do what the Broncos did, where $85 million, and then take nobody besides a bunch of unrestricted free agents to the playoffs, that's coaching. The only other team to do that, as I said earlier, was the Rams in 2023, I believe. That was supposed to be they're going to pay their debt for selling their soul to win a Super Bowl. They were in the playoffs playing good.
There was 1 year where they haven't made it since the Super Bowl. 1 year. No playoffs.
And they were playing the Lions. They almost beat the Lions. Stafford returning to Detroit. That was a hell of a game.
Yeah.
We need to trust Sean McVay when he does things like this.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care about getting a better seed, because our goal is to win the Super Bowl. We're going to have to play all these teams anyway. If we're not good enough to beat certain opponents, then we're not going to go to the Super Bowl. We don't have let's get some pride points and win a wild card because of a good and favorable matchup.
Yeah.
No, we're going to have to win these games anyway. And they got the Vikings, and the Rams are we know if we lose, we're playing the Lions or the Vikings. Guess what? We're playing one of those teams anyway. Either we're playing the Lions in the NFC Championship game probably, or we're going to lose the game and play the loser of that game, which would be the Vikings, who we've already beat. So what's more important to us is resting our starters and getting Jimmy Garoppolo, who they just added to their team, very valuable reps. And they did. Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 300 yards on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
He threw the ball 41 times. Sean McVay was No, we're just going to get you these reps just in case something goes wrong. Imagine if something happens to Stafford. He's been dealing with injuries all year.
Yep.
Now you have that confidence that Jimmy Garoppolo's first playing time isn't in that moment. Oh, we've already talked about things. He understands our system. He's a veteran. And then at that moment, if it happens, he'll be a genius for this decision. But the Rams as a whole, it's hard to – I feel the same way about Denver kind of. It's a very good coach. It's a little different because you have a proven quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback that wants to win a Super Bowl. I felt like last year the Rams could be that team that's like the dark horse. I'm going on a run. Why?
Yeah.
Because we've seen them beat Buffalo. We've seen them beat the Vikings. We've seen the Rams rise to the occasion in the toughest opponent stretches of their season. And they won their division. So they're hosting a playoff game.
Yep.
I like the Rams this year again as a dark horse team that can do it with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Kyron Williams and whatever. It's not going to be pretty. If they go to the Super Bowl, it's not going to be because they dominated everybody. It's going to be because they won shootouts and they won games that required them to score 35 or more points. But the Rams, I think, are capable of rising to that occasion. I'm not saying they're my favorite or even my second favorite, but I am saying that they're a playoff team that people should take serious.
They're one of my favorite teams, just saying like favorites, like not favorites to win the Super Bowl, not favorites to lose. They're just one of my favorite teams. Sean McVay's a sick coach. Matthew Stafford, I knew Stafford for 80% of his career when he was in Detroit and then moved to LA. Loved that he moved to LA because they got rid of fucking Matthew Stafford. Unfortunately, and then we got Jared Goff to fuck around with. Love that. But it's Puka Nacua, it's Cooper Kupp. It's not a team I really like have any like issues with in terms of rivalries. They've beaten us a lot, that we've beaten them a lot, or whatever. So they're one of my favorite teams just in general. What I will say, you said Stafford's been dealing with injuries this year. Stafford's been dealing with injuries since his rookie year, dude. It's just, he's broken every year. Every year it's like, can Stafford play? Yeah, dude, he's fine. He's a fucking gamer. He is a gamer. He's one of the toughest sons of bitches in football. God, it's like him, Patrick Mahomes. I won't go into that, but there's a lot of tough quarterbacks that can't do what they do. I love all the other players in their team. But they
fakes his injuries, though.
Mahomes did fake his injuries. You're right.
He fakes his injuries so that people like him more. But Stafford, he downplays his injuries so people don't know he's hurt.
Do you remember seeing that clip in Detroit where he's like, and he's like, do you need me to throw it? Do you need me? I could throw it. No, fucking let me go throw it.
Yeah. Game-winning touchdown.
Game-winning touchdown with like a broken shoulder. Like, that is a motherfucker
That's
there.
A gamer.
That's a gamer.
Patrick Mahomes is like limping, and then the next play he's running 35 yards. It's like, wait a minute.
Dude, it's adrenaline. Why are you so mad? I'm just kidding. The Rams, though, when you look at their stats, they are the definition of a middle of the pack team. And luckily for them, I think I don't want to take anything away from them, but luckily for them, the San Francisco 49ers sucked this year. Like, I think if the 49ers are even half as good as they were last year, I think they win the division. But again, not to take anything away from the Rams because they won the games they needed to win to get to the position they're in. Go ahead.
I just want to add that they did have to play a handful of games without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
I was going to get into that.
Stafford missed some time. So, like, if you really broke it down to, like, okay, give me the games where they had all their weapons, I would be interested to see what those stats look like.
That's true. And that was one of the biggest factors for me too, was like in the middle of the year, it was Puka's gone. Now Cooper's gone. I had the Rams as one of my teams missing out on the playoffs. You know, I'm going to miss the lights segment. And here they are winning the division, getting a home playoff. And it's like, it's fucking Sean McVay's coaching. He's one of the best coaches in the league. This is what stellar coaches do. And this is what I want the Bears to do, is like, I want them to get a Sean McVay because just like Tomlin, just like Andy Reid, just like a lot of these coaches, they get every ounce of the players on their roster. And they may not look pretty at the end of the year when they're in the playoffs, but that's because you're not in the playoffs and you're looking at them being like, yeah, they're not a good team. You're not in the playoffs, bro. That's why you're saying that. Their coach is outstanding. And that's what gets them in the playoffs, man. Sean McVay is just a fucking stellar head coach.
Yeah, and one thing that you can always count on with the Rams is it's going to be a good game. Like whenever the Rams, whoever the Rams, I'm like, I got to catch this game because it's about to be lit. All right. Our next team is going to be the team the Rams are playing, the Vikings, who are coming off a disappointing loss to the Lions. They have now resigned to being known as the winningest team to not secure a number 1 seed. And that is since 1975 when the NFL started tracking seeding. So they're playing the Rams in Stafford, but the Vikings aren't feeling good about themselves right now because of the way that game went. Sam Darnold, he was only sacked twice, but Dan Orlovsky said after the game that there was 5 touchdown passes that were left on the field for the Vikings. Sam Darnold was missing those targets. I saw a couple of them to Justin Jefferson over the shoulder that just out of reach. And I remember when we predicted the game, I said, the Lions are going to go for it a couple times on 4th down, but it's going to work. And they did go for it on 4th down and score a touchdown.
They did, yeah.
And I was like, yes. Meanwhile, on the other side, like what we were concerned about with Sam Darnold came true. And now we're going into the playoffs. And the big question is, was that a fluke? Was that a fluke that Sam Darnold was under pressure playing the Lions and he choked? Or is maybe new for Sam Darnold and maybe he doesn't have the ice in his veins that we're so used to seeing with playoff teams like Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford and like Bo Nix is a question mark too. We'll see what he looks like. He looked great yesterday with a lot of pressure or Sunday. We'll see what it looks like in Buffalo, but there are a handful of young quarterbacks that we are going to have to just wait and see what they look like in the playoff form. But when the Vikings are playing their best ball, dude, like Sam Darnold's throwing 5 touchdown passes. Justin Jefferson's going off for 150. Addison's looking good. The defense is great. Van Ginkel you could argue that he should have maybe been in the conversation for defensive player of the year.
It's been good.
If he would have hauled in that interception that he had in his hands and he just dropped it. I mean, that was like the way he dropped that ball was like
it was
just let it go.
He clasped it and then let it go. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
That would have been a pick 6. It would have changed everything about the game. Vikings could have won with that kind of a momentum swing. He didn't come down with the ball, a rare miss for him and the season he's having. But overall for the Vikings, like you feel good about them. You were feeling great about them, but you still feel good about them. We'll see what they can do on Saturday.
Bill, I did not see who the Vikings signed today. Please let us know.
Sam Brady.
Get him out of the booth. Get him on the field. I saw the Sam Darnold ones. It was a couple to Jefferson over, like he overshot Jefferson to the corner. And then I think it was Addison who cut across on a slant route, had him wide open. He makes that quick throw to his right. It's a touchdown. They actually score inside the 5-yard line. So yeah, I totally, I'm right there with you in terms of like, fuck, he did have multiple missed touchdown passes. Now, the Vikings, very uncharacteristic, at least this year, how they played against the Lions. But again, I was very surprised about that, but the Lions just had a really, really good defensive plan, especially in crunch time inside the 5-yard line. They stopped Aaron Jones. They prevented Justin Jefferson from scoring, and Sam Darnold didn't look very comfortable in the pocket. It's inside the 5 there. He's just like, why haven't we scored yet? That's crazy, right? So the Vikings, though, good offense, stellar defense. And you just put that up. Daniel Jones is now on the active roster for the Vikings. Got it.
Oh yeah,
Danny
yeah. I didn't
Dimes,
know he wasn't
baby.
on the active roster.
He wasn't dressing for games, so like the last few games he was like in a hoodie and sweatpants. So it makes
Oh,
sense. But the Vikings, dude, it's hard to hate. It's hard to hate them or see them losing against the Rams this wild card weekend because of the weapons and how well they've done throughout the season.
well
Um,
coached.
well coached, like Kevin O'Connell, he's getting up there in terms of like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, these types of coaches, like that pedigree. He's getting up there. He's got, I think, the best record for a Vikings head coach in the last 3 years, in its first 3 years, something like that. And what we did with Darnold this year and this entire team has been nothing short of like spectacular. So there's a lot of credit due to him for what he's done. I had him fourth in the division. You had him third in the division this year. A lot of other teams had a lot of other NFL media had them last, and look what he's been able to do. He got the number 5 seed, and that's because they lost to the Lions in Week 18. So this team is going to be very good. I can see them beating the Rams, but I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on these teams, who's available, who's not available, this, that, to kind of go over our predictions later. But the Vikings, man, I don't really see any holes other than maybe Aaron Jones not really producing as well as he has in the playoffs, and then making them just like a one-track mind. Let me throw the ball with Sam Darnold all day, and then the defense can just go to town in terms of like rushing the quarterback and trying to get pressures and sacks on him.
Yeah, and you said Sean McVay, what makes him so great is he brings the best out of his players. And they asked Sean McVay today about Kevin O'Connell, and he said, when you see what he's done with whether Nick Mullins, Joshua Dobbs, Kirk Cousins, he goes, I think one of the biggest compliments you can give to a coach is usually guys play their best when they're working with certain guys. I think Kevin has a great ability to bring out the best in people. That's one of the things that makes him a great coach. I think there's a unique perspective he has from playing the position. He understands how to communicate, how to connect and cater things to fit their skill set, which is arguably the most difficult position in all of sports. Yeah. And he comes from him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, and Sean McVay, they are all like intertwined. And I'm going to set that up for our predictions, but we'll talk more about that on Friday or Thursday. But our 6th seed is going to be the Commanders. Okay, they pulled Jaden Daniels at halftime. Jaden Daniels, I mean, I hate to say it.
Uh-oh.
Oh man, it's almost like somebody said Jaden Daniels was going to be the best quarterback in the draft class, and it definitely looks like Jaden Daniels.
That was you.
That was one of us. I can't remember who it was, but Jaden Daniels, dude, he took the NFL week 1. He was learning. Week 2, he was learning. Very similar to Bo Nix. Week 1 and week 2, not impressive. The Commanders, I think they lost to, was it the Saints? They lost. No. They almost lost to the Saints. Here's what's different about the Commanders and, just comparing the quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels beat the Giants, the Saints, the Bears by a combined 12 points.
Yeah.
And I'm only counting one of the Giants games. They played the Giants close twice. Mm-hmm. So like the Commanders, as much as we've seen them like play their best ball in against some of the best teams, we've also seen them lose to the Cowboys. We've also almost seen them lose to those teams I just listed.
Steelers.
The Saints and the Bears. The Bears, they should have lost. It was a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
So
damn it.
I know. But now like I'm supposed to trust them to beat the Bucs, right? That's what everyone's saying. I think people are so high on Jaden Daniels that they're losing perspective about the Commanders. I really do. I think that they are forgetting that although Dan Quinn is a really good coach and he's a defensive guy, the defense has been sus during this whole season. And they don't have a strong defense. And they're going to ask Jaden Daniels to do a lot. They have a great record when Jaden Daniels rushes for, I think, more than 50 yards. They're going to need him to be extra special. I think Jaden Daniels is the kind of quarterback that can rise to the occasion. But I think it's going to be very similar to the CJ Stroud last year. He can probably, if he does win a playoff game, it would probably be this one. But I think it would go like how CJ Stroud's when you kind of beat the Browns, but then the next week you got blown out by the Ravens. I don't think the Commanders get blown out by anybody. But I don't think they win this game against the Bucs. I think Jaden Daniels plays a really good game. I just think the other team is more complete. And I don't know. That's just where I'm at right now. I still think Jaden Daniels is great, and he's going to be great. I just think the Commanders, look, they went into the season with like a 6-win projection. They, like Denver, have exceeded the expectations because of their quarterback. I just don't know how far the road goes from here.
I can see that. And real quick, Ginger's asking Daniels or Stroud. Right now, Jane Daniels. Kyle?
Stroud or who?
Daniels.
If I'm starting a season?
Mm-hmm. Or who's the better quarterback right now? Yeah. Okay, yeah. The Commanders are similar to the...
Question.
Yeah, good question, Ginger. I would put them similar to kind of like, I don't want to say the Bengals. They're just a step above the Bengals in terms of their offense. The points per game, I think they're like top 12, top 10. They're like 28 points.
Top 5.
I think, okay, so they're up there. They're like 28 and a half points, whatever, 28 plus points a game.
Their
defense,
28.5, they're fifth.
So they're fifth. Okay, so they're up there in terms of points per game. Underneath Tampa. And their defense, actually, I feel like this is the same team. Like, the points per game, offensive-wise, awesome. Their quarterbacks throwing to their receivers, rushing for touchdowns, both ballers. Baker Mayfield, we've seen more of him, so I'm going to lean Baker in terms of who's the better quarterback right now. He's got like 42 touchdowns, man.
They're the same team.
Yeah, it's the same team because the defense is like 20th or something in terms of points allowed too. So this matchup is like pretty much an even team going up against an even more even team. It's like the same. The only X factor here, I think, is Baker isn't as mobile as Jane Daniels. Jane Daniels, I feel like this game is going to be a shootout. And I think both quarterbacks have the ability to sling it. And I think the X factor in terms of running, in terms of offense, is the running game. I like Bucky Irving better on the Tampa Bay side than I do Brian Robinson on the Washington Commanders side. Now, obviously, Jane Daniels factors into the running game too, but if you kind of take the quarterbacks to be quarterbacks and the running backs to be running backs, I'm taking Bucky Irving. I'm taking Rachaad White, even though he hasn't really lived up to the hype that he was when he was drafted last year. But I'm taking that team, that running back room, slightly over Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler right now. They also have much, much more playoff experience than the Commanders. The Commanders, last time they had made the playoffs was 2012. Something like that. Like, it's been a minute since they've made the playoffs. So the Commanders are equally matched because their defense gives up a lot of points, but their offense is so good. And Jaden Daniels is such a stellar quarterback. Also, you said he was the best quarterback in the draft. Not to name names or point fingers. It was Kyle. Everybody pointed Kyle. Throw a dog shit in the chat for Kyle. But yeah, man, I get where you're coming from too, where everybody's like, yeah, Jane Daniels, the Commanders, the hype. And to be fair, what they've done this season has been great, But yeah, you're right. Like don't just write off the Bucks. The Bucks have been doing amazing things. They've won the division the last 5 years. They got Baker on a basically cheap quarterback deal after the Browns got rid of him and he had to make stops in Carolina and then the Rams to prove that he's still a good quarterback. And the Bucks have gotten everything and more out of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I'm glad you brought up how like exact those teams are because they're actually only 0.4, not even 1 point off on the amount of points they give up. The Bucks give up 22.6 points, and Commanders give up 23.
This is such an even matchup. It's crazy, right?
It's gonna be a good one. I mean, playoff football just hits different, and now. The Green Bay Packers.
Boo!
The Packers are going to be the 7th seed. I think I win like $12,000 if the Broncos and Packers play in the Super Bowl because that was my preseason bet.
Just if they make it?
Yeah, the Broncos, because at the time the Broncos were a 5-win team. So they were like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll take this guy's money. But if it happens, I'm gonna have a new studio or something. A month ago, though, the Packers looked like one of the best teams in the NFC. A lot has changed since then. They lose to the Bears, which for the Bears, I think it matters a lot more than the Packers because they weren't with Jordan Love. I think his elbow injury might turn out to be about nothing. But the loss of Christian Watson is about something.
Yeah.
They lose Christian Watson, who is their key playmaker in the passing game, to an ACL tear. And even if they kind of have, if any team can overcome that, you think it might be the Packers because of their mentality of like, it's going to be somebody different every week. Well, that has to be true now, but I still think that hurts the Packers. I thought the late game clock handling of the Bears game was it
was weird.
Yeah, beyond weird, it was very disappointing if you're a Packer fan. And that is a little unusual for Matt LaFleur. He is normally very good with situational football. He's extremely conservative when it comes to this stuff. He doesn't take risks. He doesn't take chances. Sometimes he's too conservative. If Dan Campbell and Matt LaFleur had a baby, it would be the perfect balance.
It would be Sean McVay.
Yeah. And it's just kind of weird to see that. And the Packers now are kind of limping into the playoffs, coming off of bad juju. And it makes you feel like the postseason might be a short run for them going into Philly. But I still think that the Packers can beat the Eagles. I think Jordan Love is a different quarterback in the postseason. We saw it last year. They went into Dallas and they won by 40 points. I mean, it was beyond like the Cowboys had a bad game. It was like, okay, yeah, but Jordan Love had a great game. He was in the zone. I mean, he couldn't miss. It was like Steph Curry in the Olympics this year, where he just hit like 6 threes. No matter who was in front of him, he just kept shooting it.
Or the mid-2010 playoffs with Golden State.
Yeah, just absolutely insane. So, like, if we're going to get that Jordan Love again, then, yeah, Green Bay can beat the Eagles. I think that's what your hope is right now if you're a Packers fan. Of course, like, the Packers, and this is our last team, but I think they're one of the most balanced teams in the NFL, and this goes to Matt LaFleur being that kind of conservative coach that wants to implement the running game to open up the passing game. With Christian Watson being hurt, that is going to be more valuable than ever. So Josh Jacobs is going to need 20, 25 carries. Yep. They're going to need to run the football, which hasn't been an issue all season long, and they're going to need their young, hungry defense that's been very impressive all season to play a good game. And then they're going to need Jordan Love to be a little special. I think that's all in the realm of possibilities. I think the Packers are still an 11-6 football team. I know that it's not the best vibes. But I don't like when recency bias just like gets out of hand and we just forget altogether that the Packers are an 11-win team. Have they lost to all of the playoff teams this year? Yeah, they have. Have all of those games been within 3 points or 5 points? Yeah, they've all been extremely close games, including the week 1 game against the Eagles that they lost by a field goal. So I think if Green Bay, they've proven that they can hang around with those other teams. They just need to actually win it.
Chiefs over Eagles in Super Bowl. Marky Wahoo is calling it.
Oh,
now.
I thought that was you.
That's Marky Wahoo.
What are you doing?
Marky, thanks for being out here.
No.
Just like, what's up, Wahlberg?
Marky Mark.
I want to ask you this question because I think it's important to ask. Just because of the situation. If the Packers don't make it out of this wild card round, is Mike LaFleur, is his seat heating up?
No, not at all.
Really?
It's not even lukewarm. It is colder than the frozen tundra before they installed the pipes underground to heat the field at 40 degrees, which is the optimal temperature for grass to grow. It is that cold.
I think it's getting there. And Marky Wahoo subscribed. Close. Real quick, Marky Wahoo subscribed. Cheers, Marky.
Yes. Thank you, Marky. No.
I think it gets there. I think it gets lukewarm.
I just want you to know, like, beyond you and me having a good debate here, it's just not true.
I think it is. He's had a couple good teams. He's had a couple good teams the last 3 years and has not been able to win the division.
Last year. Look what he did with Jordan Love last year.
Yeah.
You don't fire a guy that does that.
People are asking the question. The Packers, the biggest thing with the Packers, I just wanted to open that up and ask the question because I'm going to make this a short and have the entire NFL fucking media talking about this next month.
We'll take it to a poll.
We'll take it to a poll. The Packers worry me in the wide receiver thing, which is a little bit odd because you're playing that as a plus. And I understand why. Josh Jacobs is a fucking outstanding running back. He is what he was with the Raiders 2-3 years ago when he was leading the NFL in rushing yards and how great he was. It's like, yeah, this is what happens when you get to a good coach and a well-run organization and you have just a good team in front of you instead of Josh McFucking Daniels running the team, right? This is what happens when Josh Jacobs goes to a solid team. Just like we've seen across the league with Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, sorry, Bill, but just in general. The wide receivers do worry me a bit because, yes, Christian Watson going down is huge, but even with Christian Watson, downfield threat, they haven't really made much noise against really good teams, right? They've played them very close. They've played, the Commanders close, the Lions and the Vikings close. They've lost all of them, but they've played them close. Like, obviously, the opener with Jordan Love going out against the Eagles, that's a week 1 game. We're not going to put too much weight on it, but looking back on it, okay, maybe it means something. That worries me. And really, I don't know, nothing else. Maybe it is a conservative type of coaching that LaFleur does. It's a little bit safe. The Bears game, the time management, you said it was wonky as fuck, man. The play calling, their last offensive series was a little bit wonky. Even Grossi said it. A lot of other people on the internet were saying it. Like, what was LaFleur doing, right? In a sense. So that was a little bit wonky. Those two things are really the biggest things that worry me about the Packers. The defense is awesome. Edgerrin Cooper, you had talked about him a couple weeks ago. I forget what Packers game we were either watching that it was the
Lions game probably.
Okay, so it was probably something like that. You had mentioned them and I was like, wow, this Edgerrin Cooper guy is really fucking good. And I think he'll do well in the playoffs. But the fact that they're going on the road to Philadelphia is going to be crazy. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because last year they went to Dallas and that game was outstanding. Whatever they did there was awesome. Maybe LaFleur has something in the bag for the Eagles, But I don't know, man. The Eagles seem to be a different team with Saquon Barkley. But again, with the Eagles, like I said, it's the quarterback. But the Packers, the wide receiver room worries me a bit. The conservative wonkiness that LaFleur showed these last couple games, or at least the Bears game and kind of over his career in terms of conservative coaching, worries me a bit. Other than that, I mean, not much else. So while the Packers don't have a lot of holes that I'm looking at them at face value, I still don't think they are one of those teams that's going to go far in the playoffs. I could be wrong, but my initial thought is just not going far. But those are kind of my only worries with the Packers.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that the Packers, they had seen that the Commanders won before that final drive, so they would have been the 7 seed regardless.
I thought the games ended at the same time. They went on at the same time.
They were on at the same time, but the Commanders one just ended like, I think it was like when the Packers kicked that field goal. I think when the Bears were back on the field, the Packers already knew they were locked in at 7.
Okay.
Because it was brought up on ESPN earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Not that LaFleur didn't want to win. Obviously, he wanted to win, but
they knew, yeah.
Yeah, their fate was already settled. But those are our breakdowns of the 14 playoff teams. We are going to be doing our predictions on Thursday, the day after tomorrow, and that should be spicy. I can tell you right now, it's going to be a very spicy episode, and I'm just wondering if we're going to agree on one, because just by doing this, I think we disagree on 4.
Yeah. These every time we get to the playoffs too, it's just like, it's not the regular season. It's like,
it's sad to think like either the Packers or the Eagles are going home.
No, it's not that sad to see the Packers go home.
No.
But
it's crazy to think.
I know
how good of the season the Packers have had, even though it hasn't, ended a good way. It's still like their fans still think like a Super Bowl is obtainable. And for the Eagles, it's like there are a lot of people. We had Mark come in here. Marky, he said, Eagles Chiefs. So like one of these like fan bases is going to be very disappointed.
Heartbroken, dude.
And that's just playoff football. It's the nature of it, and it's just gut wrenching.
Yep.
And when you're making these predictions, you're just thinking through that lens, and it makes it like very suspenseful.
Fun fact about these games, and I'll go through the schedule here in a sec. The Texans' last like 8 playoff games have all been on Saturday at 3:30 Eastern.
And that is the stat of the day.
That is the fun fact. Rick's fun fact of the day.
Fun fact of the day.
So let's go through this schedule. Saturday games, Chargers at Texans. Saturday, Steelers at Ravens. Sunday, Broncos at the Bills. Then Packers at Eagles. Commanders at Bucks. Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football.
And I can't tell if I lost Rick or if Rick lost me. Okay, I think I lost Rick. I was like, I don't know if this is me, if I'm the problem. But
no, that was
we
me.
got Rick back. There we go. I was like, I hope that was not me.
We were gonna do, sorry to cut off there, fucking internet decides at the very last moment. We are gonna do our power rankings on Thursday's episode when we do our predictions. We're running a little bit long here of our breakdown of the team. So Thursday night we will be bringing you our predictions for Super Wild Card Weekend, as well as our power rankings. And Kyle, I think it's time for the motherfucking Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to the Chives with Kyle.
Chives with Kyle.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw these things at you really quick. Bo Nix has the third most dropped passes of any quarterback this season with 25. They're hurting his numbers, dude. They are hurting his numbers. One of those was like a 55-yard touchdown to Troy.
I was going to say, one of those had to have been a touchdown catch.
Bo Nix became the second rookie in NFL history to have 10 games of 2+ touchdown passes. Just awesome. Here is the meme that I was telling you. Oh, that is so good, right?
And those two people are, I feel like, the outlook going into Super Wildcard Weekend too. It's like that's the outlook.
That's the future. One of them's staring at a wall. One of them is staring at the endless possibilities that the mountains represent.
I agree. Lily!
Yeah, I'm doing it too.
Dude, you're gay. You're so gay.
All right. We just had that moment. And finally, I wanted to bring this up. Okay. This was an article written. I can't believe this. This was a Denver sports writer.
Wow.
And this is what he said, okay? Are you ready?
That's what he said? Are you ready?
No. The Denver Broncos moved on from Russell Wilson this offseason and replaced him with rookie quarterback Bo Nix. While that is likely the correct move in the long term, it will significantly affect the Broncos' 2024 win total. Nix will be the day one starter in Denver, but the rest of the offense leaves a lot to be desired. The AFC is so competitive and talented that it wouldn't be a shock to see this team finish last in the AFC conference. They've cut Russell Wilson, traded Jerry Jeudy, arguably their best two offensive weapons. In theory, Denver could run the ball behind Javonte Williams in an offensive line that's ranked 4th in PFF's run blocking grades. However, they also lost Lloyd Cushenberry. Last year, Cushenberry ranked 3rd in the Broncos' PFF's run blocking grade. Denver also plays only 8 games this year at home and faces a generally brutal schedule. On their 17 games, 4 come against the AFC North, 2 come against the Chiefs, and 3 more come against potential playoff teams, Seattle, Atlanta, and the Jets. Add in the Broncos swept the Chargers last season in games where Easton Stick was the quarterback, and I expect some regression on that front. They were right about that part.
Mm-hmm.
Denver also finished 3-3 in the division last year and 4-4 against playoff teams with Jared Stidham at quarterback or a rookie quarterback. I don't expect those records to replicate. Finally, Denver finished last season with a 7-10 expected win-loss record, according to ProFootballReference.com, despite finishing 8-9. Take the plus money on Denver's under 5.5 win total as a result.
Does this person know who Cortland Sutton is? Or did they just like block them out and were like, Jerry Jeudy is clearly the better receiver on the? Are they?
I don't know, but I just wanted to remind everybody, Bill, you are going into this period of time where you are hoping you're going to draft your future quarterback. This is the way it works. The scouts tell you who the best quarterbacks are, and everybody takes it as Bible. And that is the way it has always been. And then if you go outside of what they said, these are the ways that they're going to talk about your team. And I just want you to know, to come back to this moment, when they start writing shit about your quarterback that's never taken a snap, they don't know what's going to happen. They were wrong about a lot of that stuff that I just read. They just didn't know our players. There's a difference between thinking that you have bad players and saying that you don't know those players.
Mhm.
And that is the case with a lot of teams. So keep your head up. If you're a team out there that is looking to draft a quarterback, if you go outside of what they think you should do, be expected for them to load up and shoot, and they're going to withhold no bad thing. They will say it all. And it's weird, too, because nobody's come out and been like, yeah, I was wrong about Bo Nix. They just like, yeah, Nick Wright for First Things First.
Yep.
He was like, he said week 5. He was like, Bo Nix is at his ceiling. He's like 27 years old. He's 24. I'm like, and no, he's never come back on and been like, yeah, we were wrong about him. But if Bo Nix goes into Buffalo and wins a playoff game, Rick, against Josh Allen, the
Good
future
start.
people are going to have to. It gets like to the point where no one cannot talk about it. It's going to be the headline everywhere, especially if he plays the way he played. So I'm just super pumped up as a fan. Like, I watched those preseason games. I knew what I saw, and I really did believe in this young guy. And he definitely has like come through, and it's just amazing to see what drafting, the right quarterback can do to your franchise if you have the right coach in place.
Mhm.
I believe in Dable as a head coach. I saw what he did to Daniel Jones that 1 year. I don't think Daniel Jones was all that good. So I'm excited to see what a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward looks like with Dable. And the NFL. I mean, it's there's always going to be that curveball of mystery when it comes to the draft. They're wrong about things, they're right about things, but it seems like when it comes to quarterback, seems like they're wrong a lot, and they're rarely right. They're normally right about the number 1 overall. But then after that, it's just like throwing darts. I mean, like the last couple of years, the number 2 overall pick's been where you want to be. Jaden Daniels.
Somehow, right?
But then again, like Bryce Young is starting to look a lot better. And I think that'll happen with Caleb next year if he gets the right coach in place. But can you believe that's the way? I just wanted to read that article and be like, we're going into Buffalo in the playoffs, and that's where we came from.
So what I will say is, like, I totally get it why they wrote that. I can see their perspective, and if they are a Denver reporter, I can see why they wrote that. There wasn't a lot of hope going into this year, but the fans are the ones who have like the most hope and can be like kind of what you said. No, exactly what you said, actually. Are you saying they're not good players because you don't know them? Or are you just saying they're bad? You know what I mean? Like, because if you know them and if you know what they've done in the past, that's different. That's much different to being the anonymous crush versus, oh, these guys are doing really well. Or these, I don't know these guys, so they must not be good. Something to that extent. So I get where this person was coming from when they wrote that article. I don't know about Russ and Jerry Jeudy, that whole thing being the two best offensive weepons. Yeah, I was like, okay, I guess Cortland Sutton just ceased to exist.
It's also weird that Sean Payton, because he analyzed all the quarterbacks outside of Caleb, and he said that Bo Nix he felt like was the best quarterback, and he was the only other guy that knew Mahomes was going to be great. He tried to draft Mahomes. Everybody knew it. It was public information. So, like, they had joint practices with the Packers, and Matt LaFleur said the Broncos outplayed us, and we knew the Packers were good. We know that Sean can evaluate the quarterback. Like, why was all that not worth anything? I felt like they just saw what they wanted to see because it reinforced what they already said. And they just were like, well, we kind of have to double down, triple down. And now it's just fun to go back and be like, hey, for all you fan bases going into the uncertainty, just know that they really don't know what's going to happen.
That's fair. That's fair. But I am excited to see Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, Patrick Surtain in the playoffs for the first time in their careers. It is going to be exciting to watch in Buffalo this weekend for Super Wild Card Weekend. Payne is the last of the old school coaches like Belichick and Parcells. He'd rather work with nameless, hungry players than talented, underachievers. Yeah, Crafty, I think you had said this on Sunday too, and I was like, that could not be a more accurate statement. Is like, if you play hard, I'm already a good coach. I know what I'm going to get out of you. So Sean Payton is definitely one of those guys. But with that being said, Thursday night, guys, we're going to be doing our predictions as well as our power rankings of all the playoff teams in the Super Wild Card weekend. And obviously, we're going to shorten our list as we progress through the playoffs. But thank you guys to everyone that was here. Crafty, Jinja, Lily, KC, Bill, Marky Wahoo. We had Nick in here as well. We had the Hurricane, we had Edub, and we had Liam as well as Daniel Barry. Thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate all the comments, all the likes. If you haven't hit that like, please make sure to hit that like before you get out of here. Hit that subscribe button, hit that share button. Tell a random person on the street, tell your family members, send a tweet to Elon Musk, send him a DM, send a DM to all those OnlyFans models you follow on Instagram. Not that I know, but go ahead and send them a message about the Only Football Podcast. We would really appreciate it. Go follow us on X at And Now Rick and at NFL with Kyle. Go follow the Only Football Podcast at Only Football Pod. Hit us up on Twitch and here on YouTube. And Kyle, always a good time, brother.
Playoffs, baby.
Woo!